Welcome to Flunking the Written, a fully spoiled Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast in which two Uber fans break down every episode of the show. Join Kimberly and Megan every other Tuesday as they overanalyze each scene and discuss the Buffyverse at large. Now let's meet up with the Scoobies and get into this episode of Flunking the Written.
What can I say? I flunked the written.
All right, Kim, we are about to get into our discussion of Lover's Rock. That was apparently very difficult for me to say. This episode was written by Dan Weber and directed by David Simmel, and the DVD blurb is Spike returns to Sunnydale and kidnaps Willow so she can create a magic spell that will make Drusilla love him once more.
Well, okay.
So, yeah, coming out hard and fast with, hey, Spike's in this one!
Mm-hmm.
Can I mention something?
Well, it's pretty popular.
Can I mention something that really bugs me?
Okay.
So I have the season 3 DVDs in my hand right now. And disc, let's see here. Let's just take a moment. Disc 6, the final disc of this season, features Spike on it.
The final one?
Yes.
But he's not...
He's in one episode, and it's not even close to, the disc that he's featured on. And I'm just like,
yeah.
What about Giles? Couldn't you put Giles on there? It's like Buffy and Angel, Xander and Willow, Faith and Spike. And I'm just like, really? Spike's not really in this season.
Yeah, just the one episode.
He hasn't earned a disc.
Yeah, he doesn't really become a regular until 4.
Yes. Now, this is something that's fun noting before we get into this, is that this is supposedly the episode that really cemented that, bringing him in as a main character. And it's almost like, it seems like a trial run to me. Like, they really wanted to, play with him with as many different characters as possible to see if he could be incorporated into the cast full on. And that's why you have him with so many different actors throughout.
Makes sense.
So we start at the school with Xander and Willow. Willow is very upset about her academic failures, which is funny to me because I actually don't, we've discussed this already, I actually don't understand how the SAT is scored. So I assume this is all great and Willow's done fantastic, but I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
Like 1430 for Buffy and everybody's super excited. I was like, cool, that's just numbers to me.
Okay, so I actually, when watching this episode, looked it up.
Okay, educate me.
Okay, so it's 2 main parts of the test, a verbal and a math.
Mm-hmm.
And you get a score for each one. The highest for each one you can score is 800.
Okay.
And so your joint score, the highest anyone can score is 1600. The average score for high school seniors in the United States is 1,000.
Ooh.
Is average.
Yeah.
So 1430 is good.
1430 is good.
Yeah.
I like how there's a pause where she says 740 and then she's like verbal because it's, just half of the test and
yeah,
the total is 800. So that makes perfect sense. That is something that Willow would be very upset about.
Well, okay, yeah. If she got 740 verbal and 740 math, hers would be 1480, which would be 120 lower than a perfect score.
Yeah.
And perfect scores are they pay you thousands of dollars to go to Harvard and stuff.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure
it's like it's like a 36 on the ACT.
Yeah, I'm sure Willow knocked it out of the park on the math because she's not worried about that. It's just the verbal. It's just the verbal in which he's a failure.
Yeah.
So Xander starts to comfort her about her test scores, and Cordelia and Oz approach, and then it's more of this awkwardness.
Yeah. It's kind of more sincere with the two of them when it first starts, and at this point it kind of seems like they're just pushing it.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because they're so on edge that him just sitting next to her with her arm around it's like they're like, oh, that's gonna be such a giveaway. Oh, I'm so nervous. I'm just like, that's something that they would potentially just do for each other as friends. But also, like, the level at which they overreact, I don't know how Cordelia and Oz haven't started, like, piecing it together. But there's
because they do it so much.
So many scenes where Xander just, like, launches 10 feet in the air anytime Cordelia shows up when Willow's around. It's yeah.
Okay, during this scene when this happens, I made a note of it because the script book actually says, how fast can a man remove his hand from a shoulder? Like, that's the instruction. It says, Cordelia says, you guys get your score, and then it's how fast can a man remove his hand from a shoulder, and then Xander starts talking to her. Mm-hmm. And I just thought that was kind of funny the way they put it. And then they start talking about Cordelia's scores and how she did really good, but they don't tell us what it is.
No, that's a secret. Oz uses his sarcastic voice.
You know, it sounds a lot like your regular voice. I've been told that.
You know, there's not a lot of ways in which I'm like Oz. I'm not nearly as cool as Oz. But I, too, have, like, an undiscernible sarcastic voice sometimes. And I think it's because I use sarcasm, like, way too much. And so it just blends into my regular voice. But it just cracks me up that his sarcastic voice is indiscernible from his regular voice. And then it's suggested that they should go on a double date. And, like, even Xander's kind of like, yeah, that could have potential. I'm just like, Xander, why would you be on board with this?
Yeah. It just kind of seems like it's asking for trouble.
Yeah, like,
you know,
I don't know. Maybe it's the let's overcompensate and act totally normal, and this is something that totally normal us would do. Which is funny because, like, Cordelia even turns to him. It's just like, no, don't agree to this, and he goes along with it. I'm just like, you had a perfect, like, scapegoat right there with your girlfriend saying no, and you could have been like, maybe not. And then it would have been done, and you wouldn't have to worry about it. Not that they ever actually go bowling, but, you know, still.
Yeah, they never quite make it.
And then Buffy comes up, kind of, out of sorts as she hands over her test scores, and we now know that they are in fact very good test scores. Thank you for the lesson, Kimberly. I appreciate it.
I had to look it up.
I love Willow's reaction. She's just so jazzed.
Because of what Buffy got, yeah. But we never actually hear anyone else's score except Buffy's. Mm-hmm. When we hear half of Willow's.
Half of Willow's. We know that half of Willow's is similar to Xander's combined score as well, because that was mentioned.
Well, I mean, average is 1,000, so it makes sense.
Yep. As they discuss, it's kind of like, you know, starting the discussion of Buffy having an actual future, and Cordelia's all excited because she can leave and never come back. And everybody kind of looks at her curious, and Cordelia's like, no, that's a positive because, you know, Sunnydale, kind of the worst, right?
Yeah.
It is fun to note that Cordelia takes her own advice here. She leaves and she never comes back.
Yep, as far as I know, she doesn't even go visit.
Yep. And from there we get a cutaway to the second of the ultimate series-long 3-beat of Spike knocking down a Welcome to Sunnydale sign. And this one actually exactly mirrors the first one, where he knocks down the exact same sign, except this time, instead of strutting out all high and mighty, talking about how, like, you know, awesome and cool he looks, and whatever, you know, all that cool leather jacket, blonde, bleached hair Spike. This is just drunk fallout and chuckling at himself before he even gets through his badass line Spike. And I gotta say, I like both versions. There's hardly a version of Spike I don't enjoy.
Yeah. When it comes back to the show and he's wandering through the factory, I'm kind of curious why he went to the factory. Because, like, the last place he lived with Drusilla was the mansion.
Yeah.
But he ends up wandering through the factory that's, you know, all burned and stuff.
I kind of envisioned it as he's reliving memories. So the reason he knocks down the sign is because that's what he did when he first arrived in Sunnydale last season. So he's kind of reliving that, and then he goes to the factory because that's the first place they went. And so he's just kind of going through those motions of re-experiencing those moments.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
But yeah, the factory is indeed very burnt and not looking in the best of shape.
No.
He goes down to the basement. And he just kind of goes through and picks up one of her dolls and then starts talking about, like, why did she leave him? And, starts to tear up a little bit and then instead loses his mind on this doll and starts beating it senseless with, like, a large candlestick, calling it a stupid, worthless bitch. So,
yeah.
He's very level right now.
Oh, yeah, not needing some kind of a med or something at all. And then we're back in the school, and Xander and Cordelia are at her locker, and they're discussing the bowling date, and Xander is claiming it's classy, and, to Cordelia's like, no, it's not. Which she's not wrong, it's not classy. Then he sees some pictures in her locker that we learn they took at the pier. He is kind of a little bit touched and excited that he's in her locker.
Mm-hmm.
And he says that he never knew he was locker door material. And she says, well, just barely. But there is a comment here that Cordelia makes in the script that was not in the show.
Okay.
And when he says there's pictures of me in your locker, she says, well, I put them there because I want to see your face between classes. Get it? So thinking of us together makes me, I don't know, happy, okay? Is it such a big deal that you make me happy?
Oh.
And then he says, never knew I was locker door material. And they cut that out, but I think they're kind of just showing in the beginning half of this episode how much Cordelia and Oz are in love with the two of them.
Yeah.
Xander and Willow. Because Cordelia doesn't usually, she has actions. Like, she sits at the hospital with him all night and brings him coffee. But she usually doesn't say things.
Yeah. And it's always been, like, weird. Not only with Xander, like, that's just not her love language.
Yeah.
Either. Like,
Her love language is acts of service.
Yes, absolutely. And it's perfect.
Very obvious.
Perfect for her character. But, I'm glad that they cut that, because I would say that would make these, like, pairing scenes even more awkward for me, because I already think that as cute as it is, the Oz giving Willow the little Pez witch, I think there's parts of that where they pushed it just a little too far, and I feel like the Cordelia and Xander scene is just right. And had they left that line in, it would have been similar to how I feel about the Willow and Oz scene coming up, where there's just something that's a little too, they're really salting the wound a little bit too much, to the point where it's almost out of character. And I don't really think
I think that's what they were trying to do.
Yeah. And I don't think that the Willow and Oz is as out of character as the Xander and Cordelia would have felt, but I think even it's kind of, it's odd. It makes me pause every time and think, what's going on here?
Well, and if you, in the first part of the episode, when you see this interaction with Xander and Cordelia, if it's the first time and you don't know what's coming, you're just like, oh, they're getting closer, and she's starting to, accept him more and stuff. And then you watch it the second time and you're like, oh, yeah, they were trying really hard to do that, weren't they?
Yeah. Anyway, the two couples collide, saying that they're gonna bowl. Xander and Cordelia leave, and then we're with Oz and Willow, and this is where the Pez Witch happens, which I have mentioned is adorable. I do like that happens, but there's just this weird exchange where Willow asks, like, what's the occasion, and he's just like, pretty much you are, and then even goes on to be like, I don't have anything to give you. And he replies, yeah, you do. And I don't know, like, this always kind of feels like there's an intent to this line, but I've never really understood the intent. And I don't know if it's just to...
You don't get the intent of that? He wants to have sex with her.
Well, that's the thing is, though...
I think that's what it's supposed to be.
It doesn't...
That he wants to take their relationship further.
Yeah, and I wrote that. I feel like it's ready. He's trying to, like, seed that he's ready to take the next step. But I think it's also weird because, for me, I feel like that's not the way that Oz would approach that.
No, and I don't know that he'd just say something like that and walk off.
Yeah, like that's...
Especially immediately after giving her a Pez. I mean, like, I have issues with the Pez. It's cute and everything, but, like, Willow is way... I mean, it is not a diamond ring.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I'm not a materialistic person at all, but she gets way too hyped up over a witch Pez.
Uh-huh.
You know?
That's the thing, like, if this scene just doesn't play right to me, and I think it's because of the way that they're trying to, like, set this up. And because of that, the really obvious stuff just doesn't even feel obvious to me because it's so uncharacteristic of it. And I think the Oz line especially, like, that's a line that I would expect from some jerk that Buffy has, like, a one-episode relationship with. That is not an Oz line. That is like the guy who thinks he's a cool guy but isn't actually a cool guy line. And that's not who Oz is. Oz is a cool guy because he doesn't care whether or not people think he's cool, and he doesn't try to present himself as cool other than the fact that he has cool hair, that he recognizes that he definitely knows that he has cool hair, because that was called into question when Snyder appreciated it, and then he had his one self-conscious moment. But Oz doesn't have those moments, and I feel like that's such a, that's such a, like, lame, like, you know, air quotes, cool guy line, and it feels so gross coming from Oz, and I hate it.
It doesn't feel like that's the way Oz would start the conversation about that.
Yeah.
And as far as we know, we've never had a conversation about that.
Yeah.
I think he would be not only more smooth than that, but also more caring and understanding than that, you know?
Yeah. And it's also just weird timing-wise, because it's just like, you know,
a Pez.
I'm going to give you a Pez
and
dispenser,
now give me your virginity.
Now you're going to give me some. Yeah, like, I mean, it's not. It's just so, ugh. Anyway, I think the scene would have worked just fine if he had given her, like, a little gift of, I just saw this, and I was just like, oh, that's, you know, Willow's kind of getting into witchcraft. That's kind of a fun thing. And just a thinking of you gift. And that's kind of presented like that, but even the way he says it, he's just like, well, I think about you. It's just weird. I don't like it. Okay, go on.
I will say that I feel this way, like, now as, you know, 40-something years old, and I've watched it literally dozens of times. But when I was, like, a sophomore in college and saw it for the first time, I remember thinking it was really cool. Like, oh, you know, that's so awesome what he said. But, like, now it's kind of like, yeah, that's not cool what he did. So a lot of my opinions about stuff like that have changed over the years.
Yeah.
But I can remember what I thought the very first time and, like, what some of my favorite parts were. And I remember this scene being one of my favorite scenes in the whole season. But that's also when I was, you know, 19 years old.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think this scene could have played fine and gotten the same little, like, coupling moment. Like, I think that
if he hadn't done that part, that last line.
Part at the end and some of the stuff was just kind of framed a little bit different. I like the line that, you know, you are the occasion, like, just your existence. I just, you know, saw this thing, it reminded me of you, and I got it for you. That kind of mentality. It's just like, that's a sweet thing that could have had the same impact on Willow without having that extra bit that makes it seem like he's kind of, you know, ready to take the next step. And it's not even, like, in the text in such a way. Now I know like when they get back together, and I will have so much to complain about when they get back together, but when they get back together, I know Willow really pushes for the next step like way too fast. And so maybe this is partly trying to set up that, you know, Willow kind of expected that was, but I don't even know, like, I don't know how it would flow together until I watch that episode again to see if maybe this is trying to set up Willow's reasoning for pushing so hard for sex right when they get back together. But it just seems weird on both of these characters to ever push for that. And I think when they finally do have sex for the first time, it's such a natural, like, obvious thing when that happens that, like, these earlier
what are you
parts...
doing? Panicking.
Yeah, like, it's just, it works so well when they actually have sex for the first time, but all of these weird, like, interactions that kind of allude to the fact that they want to have sex just don't feel natural compared to when it actually happens.
It's trying too hard.
Yeah. Anyway, I spent way longer talking about that scene than I thought. So the next scene is at the library. Giles looks over Buffy's scores and talks about how remarkable they are and that, you know, basically she has a actual future now. In the midst of this, okay. I'm gonna be all over the place with this scene. So let me just break it down real fast. Giles is going on a camping trip. He packs like Buffy. There's a bunch of stuff on the table, and he has way too much gear for the little bit of camping trip that he's done. It's weird that finally, I guess, Giles is this an official... I don't know if it's ever mentioned. Is this a Watchers Council thing, or is this just a completely separate thing?
That's what I said. She goes, where is this retreat thing? And he says, it's quite nearby. The clearing at the top of Breaker's Woods. And I'm like... Who are you retreating with?
Yeah, like, who is going on this retreat with Giles? Is it just Giles?
Is it local librarians? Is it just you? Is it, you know, your band when you do karaoke in the evenings at open mic night? Like, did all the Watchers Council people come over? What's happening here?
Yeah. So anyway, he's going on a retreat so he can be outie for whatever reason. And, as they're kind of talking back and forth, he returns the SAT scores and talks about, you know, Joyce wanting to hang it on the refrigerator, and she has the lovely line. She's like, yeah, when she saw these scores, her head spun around and exploded. And Giles is briefly confused.
I've been on the Hellmouth too long. That was metaphorical, yes?
Yes.
So this is when Buffy actually kind of, you know, broaches the conversation about a future and says that, you know, Buffy's mom's been talking about Buffy going to college. Giles kind of agrees that that's something that Buffy should look into, because with scores like that she'd be denying herself to not at least explore the possibility. And then this is the part that, like, is something that I have more to say on, and I don't know how much I'm going to get into it in this episode. But the line specifically, and I have talked several times about how I'm really upset about the way that, like, people are treating Faith in this season. But we just came off of Revelations and all of the crap that Faith is having to deal with, and the fact that it still seems like people aren't really supporting her. And here they have a conversation of, Buffy, you can go have a future. Faith is here.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, no, guys, stop being the worst. Stop it. Yeah, that's like, I mean, that's what they're basically saying. And, it's so annoying that this is just in here as much as it is. I did not realize how much it's in here. And I've recently listened to a podcast. It was part of, like, a special podcast, and I'll see if I can find the link, but it's part of a special podcast that Buffering the Vampire Slayer did, where they actually brought on some BIPOC voices to talk about some aspects of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and one of them talks about how they really feel that Faith is coded as black, or at the very least, she is a person that exists in the same realm as the minorities that are targeted by the societal systems that exist. She is in the same poverty level and has the same background as that. And because of that, I really started watching this season a little differently. And there's definitely things in here that would back that up, that you could definitely read Faith as a coded black person, and the privileges that Buffy gets versus what Faith gets is striking.
I've never actually thought about it that way, but I can see it. I can 100% see it.
Yeah, and I would have never said that myself. But this is from somebody from that demographic who is saying that. I'm never going to say anybody's coded as anything that I don't personally, like, have experience with enough to feel like I can say that. But this is a black voice saying that, no, Faith is coded black. And I'm just like, okay, now I have to watch this show entirely differently and try to see that perspective and see what is the conversation at that point if I look at Faith as if she were black. And it's hard. It's hard to watch it that way. It's hard to watch it now. I mean, and that's the true thing, is like, because our systems target black people, they target people who are impoverished and all of those, there is more people that are affected by it than just those groups. And so Faith can still fall into that category without being black herself. She can still fall into the category that is also impacted by the systems that are in place specifically to target those people due to the racism that exists within the system. But it's extra impactful when you really look at it as kind of the black and white way that some people want to look at it. And if you just change Faith's skin tone in your mind and really think about it that perspective, the messages become a whole lot more clear. And when Giles announces to Buffy, you can go off and have a future, because now Faith's here and Faith can take care of all of this terrible stuff and deal with all of this terrible stuff. And, you know, obviously Buffy's dealt with a lot of terrible stuff, but it's just the way it's phrased, that you can have a future because Faith is here. And Faith
not have one.
Yeah, Faith doesn't need to have a future. We're not worried about Faith having a future. And Faith's not even in this episode, and I'm ranting about her.
Yeah, no, they just talk about her a little bit.
Yeah.
And then Giles kind of warns her not to have sex with Angel again.
There's so much in this scene, and it's like,
yeah,
it's like a minute and a half, and you're just like, oh my god, stop.
Yeah, and she claims that no, she's not gonna do anything rash. There's not gonna be any rash. And then we go back to Xander and Willow, who are talking about how the double date is a big, terrible mistake. They shouldn't be doing it, and they're gonna know. And Willow says they're gonna know, and Xander says, how are they gonna know? And I'm like, it's kind of familiar.
I mean,
it's a TikTok trend.
To be fair, though, like, the fact that they haven't started piecing together something at this point, I mean, Xander has a point.
Yeah.
They had ankle sex in the same room as Cordelia, and Cordelia didn't notice. I mean, come on.
And literally every time Cordelia or Oz looks at them, they jump away from each other.
Yep. I do like that in a previous episode, we had ankle sex, and in this episode, she's talking about, like, shoe rentals being sexy. I'm just like, Willow, you've got a fetish that I did not need to explore.
Got some foot things going on. And then they basically kind of act a little bit like they're about to kiss and have a moment there outside for literally anyone to see. And you know somebody saw.
Yeah. Yeah, they're not being super stealthy at all with any of this. I feel like this is another one of those really forced scenes. And this is what I'll say is, like, I felt like these were kind of stacked in a row, and it kind of brought my momentum down of, like, these, like, weird forced scenes. But, like, especially when we get to the end of this scene, and they're just, like, so at a loss of what to do, and how they're gonna, like, you know, make it through this bowling date. And, like, Xander gives the line, I wish I wasn't so attracted to you. I wish we could make it all stop. I just, like, feel like this is just the most forced delivery. Like, none of it feels natural to these characters. And I feel like that's kind of been the Willow and Xander romance. And I know that that's got to be partially intentional, but I don't understand why that was the intent.
Like, why they did it that way.
Yeah. Is it just because, I mean, obviously it's framed as something that is bad, but I don't think that giving them more natural lines or a more natural way to get into this position, because, like, the very first scene where they first kiss is such a, like, awkward, not them interaction. Like, it's set up specifically so that they can kiss in a very, like, unnatural setting that I can't imagine them together in, to create this romantic atmosphere. And, like, this is, like, another situation here where it's just, like, this is to set up Willow wanting to do the anti-love spell and to kind of, like, continue to, like, make it very awkward and uncomfortable between them, even though they're clearly attracted to each other. I feel like the only scene between them that I feel like was 100% natural was the scene in the library where they were making out and Giles walks in on them. Like, that's the only scene that worked for me out of all of this that I can think of right now. That actually feels like it was those two characters doing those things. Like, every little touch, every time they're kind of like, I mean, I'm just like, these two people have been so in each other's lives for so long that, you know, I don't care, like, how crazy your hormones are all over the place. The fact that, like, every little touch set them, like, you know, 30 feet in the air because it was just so amazing, you know. The electricity between them was so unheard of. It's just, none of it felt real.
Okay, so then we go to Buffy and her mom at home, and they are again discussing the SATs and what college Buffy can apply to. Buffy's mom is very excited.
I totally heard that like it was like a label for Buffy. Like, this is like, you know, sports Buffy, and this is like, you know, mall Buffy, and this is college Buffy, like different types of Barbies. Sorry, go on.
There are a lot of different types of Buffys.
I'm gonna stop derailing everything that we get to. Oh, Buffy's kind of like, you know, right, great, everybody's just like, congratulations, go away. And this is like when I start to get confused about how uneven Joyce is this season so far, because a main component of Band Candy was that Joyce didn't want Buffy to leave.
Yeah.
And now she's just like, yay, you can go away and never come back. No, wait, that was Cordelia. But still basically the same thing. And it just, I don't know what direction Joyce is going in, but she's very inconsistent episode to episode, and it bothers me.
But she's wanting her to go to college where she would stay in a dorm and be on campus and not be able to drive anywhere. So
it's just the driving that she had a problem with.
Yeah, she still wouldn't be able to actually go anywhere.
I feel like the PTSD that Joyce probably should have been going through this season after having her daughter disappear for 3 months and, you know, just reappear randomly is not necessarily handled with the most grace, but also it's Joyce, and like we've seen her have a relationship with a psychotic robot that she didn't realize was a robot but thought was a psychotic serial killer, and was just like fine after that. And I'm just like, oh. No, you need time.
Yeah, there's lots of situations in here like that where I'm like, y'all need to get some therapy. Maybe take a vacation.
I think that there's some interesting co-parenting still happening in this, though. Speaking of Band Candy, where she talks about how she's already talked with Giles, and again, they've already talked about how, like, Faith can be here, you know? Faith can be the Slayer here. We haven't really discussed the fact that there's nothing really in the Slayer rules that say that they have to be in Sunnydale.
No.
So, I don't know why.
As we discover in the next episode.
Yeah, like, I don't really understand why this is such a, like, the Slayer has to be here kind of way of putting it. But, it's just, again, another one of those examples of this is where the bad stuff is happening, so we can leave Faith here to deal with that, and Buffy can go have her future. Joyce is kind of like, you gotta think about your whole life and what is keeping you here, and this is when we cut to Angel, who is not shirtless nor doing Tai Chi, so I don't care.
He is, in the script, it says that he is sitting and reading a book called Nausea.
Yes, ma'am.
In the original French, Oh Prop Master.
Oh, Prop Master.
So, okay, I have no idea what that's referencing, so I looked it up. Still don't really, I mean, it's just a book.
Yeah.
Because I was wondering if it had, like, something to do with the plot or something.
So.
Because it was specifically in the script what book he was supposed to be reading, so I was like,
Yeah, and this is a weird through line that doesn't entirely work until you really... This is more of like an Angel the series through line. But the author, Jean-Paul Sartre, is existentialist, which I've talked about existentialism very briefly in Lie to Me last season. But it's the kind of idea of, you know, individual existence and freedom of choice, and that people are defined by their own meaning, which is a major philosophy in Angel later on when we talk about if nothing we do matters, all that matters is what we do. So it's more of like blended in there to kind of continue to play with that philosophy that's very integral to Angel as a character. I don't really imagine that it has anything specifically to do with this episode, maybe. If you really, I mean, you can infer meaning all across the board, you know. You can find meaning in everything and figure out a way to intertwine it, because that's what people do. They overthink things and figure out a way to connect the dots. But that's the only little tidbit that I have about it, is that it's another little seed planted regarding existentialism.
So Angel is reading his book, and then after a little while he closes it and goes to bed. And then we see Spike, who is very drunk, and he's in the script it says he's supposed to be drunk to the point of slurring his speech. And he does a pretty good job of acting drunk.
Oh yeah.
Basically he's ranting at Angel that I'm not afraid of you, we were happy and you ruined it, I'm gonna show you. And then trips over something and passes out. We skip to the mansion and the sun's coming up, and Spike is passed out in the fountain. And his hand catches on fire from the sun. Mm-hmm. Which is kind of weird, considering that, like, other vampires who are caught in the sun, they just, like, immediately whole body combust and are gone. They don't have time to run for cover.
The only thing, this is my headcanon, is that Spike takes like a daily bath in like SPF like 750 lotion,
something
just like the
that.
highest level that he can find, just covers himself in it, because we see this man run through the sunlight, do it like just have like a little thin something covering him. He's just like in direct sunlight half the time, I feel like, and he's fine. He's figured out the right thing to put on him to make him less combustible than other vampires. I don't know.
And, well, Angel does it sometimes, too.
Yeah.
But not as much as Spike.
Spike really does it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, Spike will just, like, casually walk around during the day. I don't like, you know, whatever. There's a great bit of comedy acting going on here where, you know, Marsters is showing off his physical comedy chops of, you know, running around in panic with this flaming hand and trying to put it out. I believe that this is a trend of his, but he hurt himself quite bad here. Like his hand was actually on fire. This was actually him, and he burnt himself pretty badly. But yeah, he after he gets his hand put out, he comes into contact with more sun and starts like panicking and running up the stairs, and then back to his car where he proceeds to dump alcohol over his hand and then chug it as well.
Honestly, at this point, and this occurred to me when I was watching the episode earlier this week, like, how badly do you think he smells?
Oh, man.
Like, really?
Yeah.
It's Spike, and you don't want to think that, but, like, he's been drenched in alcohol and, I don't know, do vampires sweat?
They do when they do Tai Chi. We know that much.
Well, yeah, so in sweat and just, he's got to be pretty nasty by now.
Oh, gosh. Yes. I don't know if they have, like, the same odor-producing sweat that us mere mortals do, or if it's just, like, water droplets and doesn't actually put off the stank. I don't know. It could be worse, because they're technically dead. It could be worse stank.
True.
So then we go to... It's just a cute little magic shop. You know? It makes sense in Sunnydale. There's a lot of potential for, you know, making a lot of money in a magic shop. And so, like, obviously, it'd be a business that a lot of people would want to do. It's kind of like, you know, being the manager at the Bronze. Who wouldn't want that job?
Yeah, I've actually got that in here about why do people keep opening this magic store.
So, our current shopkeep notices Spike is suddenly there, is very casual about the fact that he's suddenly there, even though he did not come through the front door like any normal person
and came in
would.
the back.
Yeah, like, do you even actually understand you're in Sunnydale? Do you know what Sunnydale is, or do you actually think you're just, you know, selling baubles that don't do anything?
Yeah.
Spike asks for a curse. He wants something nasty, boils or leprosy or something like that.
They don't carry leprosy.
They don't carry leprosy. I like how she's so, like, upset about this idea of cursing somebody with, like, blemishes and skin imperfections. But then Willow comes in and starts asking for a list of stuff. She's like, oh, a love spell. You want to manipulate somebody's mind? That's great. Let's do it.
Yeah, I thought that too.
Weird moral code she has there. But yeah, Willow comes in, has a list of ingredients, explains that it's not a love spell, it's actually a delusting spell, and she gets all the ingredients and checks out. Spike is very interested when love spell is mentioned, and when Willow finally leaves and the shopkeep returns to him, he decides that he doesn't need any leprosy after all. He's just going to eat her and pursue Willow because he's got a better idea.
We break and we go to the mayor's office, which is this is the first time we see the mayor in this episode. I think it's his only scene in this episode. And he is playing golf, which it's always driven me crazy. I do not understand why someone plays golf in an office. But he's got one of those little fake grass things, and he's playing golf in his office, and basically rambling so much that I don't know how anyone stays working for him. And he's got his deputy mayor in there, and they're discussing Spike and all his shenanigans. And the mayor says this year is too important. So we got our second reference to how important this year is. And he's too important. Can't let Spike mess it up. So send a committee to him. Yeah,
I do like that you mentioned his ramblings, because I feel like that's something that I kind of noted too. And I feel like in this, he always kind of has this, but in this episode particularly,
it's a lot.
He feels way older than he presents. Like the like mad ramblings of like the whole mixed metaphor, or what all he gets into this. And he's just like completely in his own headspace and spinning in circles, and just like the expressions he uses and the way he talks, it really kind of feels like someone who's in his own little headspace, his own little world, and just like not in touch with reality at all anymore. Which he's, you know, way older than he presents, so that kind of like matches that character. But I think in this scene it's especially noticeable. I also like the touch that, you know, they openly admit here that the police covered up the magic shop incident, and that's a nice like full on confirmation. I mean, we've already seen that to another level, but it's again just like everybody's in the mayor's pocket. Like there's not any person of power within Sunnydale that the mayor doesn't have in his pocket, other than obviously the Slayer. But you know, like official, like town official.
Soon.
Yeah, he'll have a Slayer in his pocket too. Don't worry about that. But it's just a nice little, you know, reminder of how deep rooted his power goes. And it's kind of cool that it's a callback that he's been aware and present for a while now, because they talk about Spike the previous year and how he was kind of entertainment for them to see what he would do.
Yep.
Anyway, so the deputy mayor goes off to form the committee, and this entire time the mayor's been trying to improve his putting and has been doing a terrible job, but then at the very end he gets it and he's super excited and throws his arms up.
Oh, yeah, he's like, yay! And then we go to Buffy and Angel, and they're in the mansion talking, and it's about college again. And they pretty much have a conversation about her going to college and if she can, and she mentions that there's reasons to stay, and Angel says, what are they? And she says, well, you know, what do you think? And he says, as a friend, I think you should go. This is a good opportunity. And then he stops talking, so he didn't finish what is obvious for him to say. He's just like, as a friend, I think you should go. And he's not wrong. As a friend, she should go. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't finish with that. As someone who's in love with you, I think you should stay.
Yeah.
And that's what she's kind of waiting to hear, obviously. And he doesn't say it. And so she's just like, oh, yeah, well, okay, bye. And leaves. And Angel's like, well, it's early. Why are you leaving? And she's just like, yeah, I got to go. And I think Angel is smarter than this. Like, I feel like he should know why she's leaving and why she's upset.
Yeah. There's some stuff about the Buffy and Angel of this episode that I'll get into probably mostly during their last scene together. But this is awkward. Like, and it's intentionally awkward, but it's even more awkward than it needed to be. This sets up something that I think kind of falls apart for me towards the end of the episode. But you're right that there is implied, the way he says, as a friend, I think you should leave, also implies that as someone who loves you, I want you to be here. I want you to stay.
Yeah, don't go anywhere.
Yeah. But it's basically a scene to set up the end scene. And the end scene, I will have stuff to say about. So there's not a lot to say about this because it sets up something I'm going to talk about later. So from there we go to the science room. Willow is there with all of her magic-y, casty, spelly stuffs. I believe those are all technical terms for what she has there.
100% technical, yes. And
Xander comes in and says it smells like church. Wait, evil church, which is very specific. And she's explaining that it's just chemistry and that he's doing bad in it and needs to be around so he can learn from her chemistry experiments. Always the best liar Willow is. Xander gets handed a feather. Decides he's gonna try to tickle her a little bit with it, and as she shushes him and continues to work through the spell, Xander realizes that this is actually like magic stuff and not chemistry stuff. She was lying the whole time.
She thought it would work better if he didn't know.
Yes. Oh, man. And yeah.
Then he refers back to his love spell that he did.
Yep. They get into an actual, like, pretty decent fight here. Not so much so that it carries through to the next scene that they have together, but, like, at this point, they're pretty upset with each other, and, like, even Willow kind of says, like, you know, maybe at this point we don't even need to worry about, like, a delusting spell, because, you know, they're so mad at each other for this little bit here. So this is our first real example of Willow just flat out turning to magic when she wants to fix things, which is a huge part of her character arc. And like, I don't side with Xander very often, but yeah, this is gonna be a situation where I side with Xander, that maybe don't turn to the dark arts to keep your hormones in check.
Yeah, you could just, you know, not keep them, or not, yeah.
Well said.
And as Xander goes to the door to turn the lights on, he turns his back to the open door, and Spike shows up behind him. And they basically, Xander, you know, tries to fight Spike, which does not work out, and Spike ends up kidnapping both of them. Which, at the beginning of this, he seems really drunk, but then he kind of starts acting more normal. And then the next scene, we are back at the factory, and Spike is telling Willow that she's going to do a love spell to make Drusilla come back to him. Mm-hmm. And she's like, yeah, I can try. And then he gets kind of rough and threatens to put a piece of glass through her face. And she says, no, please, I'll do it. And then he gets depressed all of a sudden and drops the bottle and says she wouldn't even kill me.
She didn't even care enough to cut off my head or set me on fire. I mean, is that too much to ask? You know, some little sign that she cared. It was that truce with Buffy that did it. Drew said I'd gone soft. Wasn't demon enough for the likes of her. And I told her it didn't mean anything. I was thinking of her the whole time. She didn't care.
Which I love that even then Drusilla was like, yeah, he's got weird stuff with Buffy. And he goes into a really long rant about her making out with a chaos demon to make him jealous and all kinds of stuff.
It's a fantastic scene as far as, like, the performances go. Like, obviously, there's a lot of great stuff to say about James Marsters throughout this episode, but the level at which, as silly and goofy as parts of what is played on the Spike side of things, the fact that, like, Willow is clearly so terrified this entire time and never breaks from that. Like, there's moments, especially like during the actual threatening, but after that, like, it doesn't like just go away. And now, because it's the goofy bit where he talks about how Drusilla doesn't love him anymore, and that's played for laughs, she's still there, fully in panic mode, like so terrified about the fact that he is so unhinged and could just decide to kill her at any moment, and like is just acting her ass off. I mean, it's great. Like, if you really take the time to watch Allison Hannigan this scene, you're just like, oh my god, she gives like 110% this entire scene. And that's like, to act that level of terrified and keep that going through the comedy bits and through all of the other silly bits is really good. Willow goes to look at what Spike has gathered and says that it's not enough to perform the spell, and he says that he'll go and get the rest of the ingredients, and she's just like, that it may not succeed, and he said, well, if first you don't succeed, he says he'll kill Xander, and then she can try again.
And it's just like, oh, okay.
So he asks, like, where the stuff is, and this is one of those weird cuts, because it cuts to the library, like the stuff is going to be at the library, but none of the stuff that he needs to go get is at the library. But it's one of those, like, setup, like, this is the question, and here's the answer at the next cut, and it's not actually that at all.
Yeah.
But Buffy's at the library. She's working out. She's skipping rope, just in the library by herself, skipping rope, because there's nowhere else, I guess, she could do that. Oz and Cordelia run in and say that something's up, and then they go to the science room where they see the aftermath of Spike's kidnapping, and they mention that they don't see any blood, and they're trying to kind of figure out what it might be. Buffy sends Cordelia and Oz to go find Giles, and she's gone off on her own to try to figure out where they might be. Where does she say she's gonna go? I know she gets sidetracked because of the phone call.
Yeah, she said that she was going to just, I'll look around. Maybe they didn't go far. She doesn't say anywhere specific.
She's just gonna she's just gonna wander in circles.
No.
It's not a real firm plan. It's a very convenient phone call that kind of gets them set in the right direction. This is one thing I noticed. Like, this is definitely an episode of conveniences in a lot of places. Like, Spike just happens to be at the magic shop when Willow comes in. Buffy just happens to catch Joyce on the phone at the same time that Spike just happens to land.
How often does Joyce actually call her at the library?
Yeah.
And here's my question. In this scene, Buffy is in the school with no teacher or authority figure around. Xander and Willow were in the school doing experimental stuff in the chemistry lab. And then Cordelia and Oz go into the school to meet them for their double date. Like, is the school just... It doesn't... It's open all the time?
It's just another hangout. It's just another hangout spot. Yeah.
Okay, so we're not a double date tonight. Where we're going to meet? Oh, the chemistry lab at school. We'll meet there. Like, what? And then, Buffy, she hears Spike on the phone call with her mom and drops the phone and runs out.
I love that Joyce's reasoning for calling the library is so that she can schedule a college talk.
Later that night. Like,
can I pencil you in for 9:30?
Yeah, it's really weird that she's calling to schedule a college talk to begin with, because, it's your daughter. Just tell her, come talk to me.
Yeah.
Like, come talk to me, Buffy. But, she's wanting to schedule one for later that night. Not just, sit in the living room and read a book until Buffy comes home and then, hey, Buffy, come talk to me. She's going to, pencil it in.
Yeah.
We're at Buffy's house, and Spike is in the kitchen with Joyce and telling her all about how Drusilla left him and cheated on him with a chaos demon. And Joyce mentions that she sounds very unreasonable, and then tries to make a connection between when Buffy's dad and her started fighting. And he says it's different. And then asks for marshmallows for his hot chocolate, which Angel kind of does a thing both in Buffy and in Angel when he gets his own show where he doesn't eat. Vampires don't eat. Mm-hmm. Spike always has eaten and drank. He's always drunk alcohol. He's smoked. In this one, he's drinking hot chocolate. In season 4, he eats all kinds of stuff. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, they don't really have a specific thing they do with the vampires on that in this
It's interesting because there's even that scene when Angel's briefly human where he talks about eating food like it's like he can finally taste it again. So is Spike just doing it because he enjoys the physicality of it, or does he do it because his taste buds work differently than Angel's? I don't know. Can he actually? He talks about stuff making stuff taste differently, so he definitely has some level of taste buds. But I don't know if it's just muted, or if Angel just doesn't see the point, or if Angel's just such a stick in the mud that he's just I won't let myself have any joy. I won't even find pleasure in food.
Yeah, it never really tells us.
Yeah,
what it is.
But yeah, Spike likes a snack every now and again, and especially little marshmallows in his hot chocolate. That sounds great. Speaking of Angel, he's just there for some reason. Again, a moment of convenience.
Now I feel like he was there to talk to Buffy because she left kind of annoyed.
But
it's kind of what I've always thought.
Wasn't there wasn't there just a conversation between the two of them earlier where he was just like, your mom doesn't know about me, and Buffy's like, no, and then Angel's like, I'm gonna go walk over to the Summers house.
Well, I mean, I still think he's just trying to find her.
Yeah.
To be like, what happened? Why did you leave that way?
I feel like...
Even though he should know.
Yeah, I feel like Angel matures so quickly in his own series. Like, anytime I watch Angel and Buffy, I'm just like, why are you such just a big dum-dum and make all of the most terrible decisions? And he takes a lot of terrible decisions on Angel, too, but at least the terrible decisions he makes in Angel are, like, motivated by, like, anger or frustration or stuff like that. They're not just like, I'm just gonna, like, walk around and be completely idiotic. I'm gonna, like, in the episode Angel, where Buffy's clearly trying to hide the fact that there's a man in the house, he just walks out in front of Joyce and is just like, hey. And you're just like, no, stop. Yeah. Why are you such an idiot? So anyway, this tracks. Angel would just totally walk over to Buffy's house and be like, hi, Buffy, I know you said your mom didn't realize I was alive, but hey.
Let's do this.
Yeah, he sees Spike is there through the door, and he runs up, like, pops over the porch railing and is ready to attack when he realizes that he is still disinvited and is just met with a barrier at the door. And then we have this amazing, just delightful beauty to watch. Where Angel's desperately trying to get in, and Spike is just lording it over him as Joyce is panicked.
It's so awesome. It's so awesome.
Buffy has to ruin it, though.
Yeah. I love it when Spike tells Angel, you're a very bad man. I love it.
So Buffy comes in and knocks Spike down across the counter and invites Angel in.
At which point Joyce panics.
Yeah, like, read the room, Buffy.
Yeah. But she doesn't really have much faith in Buffy.
Yeah.
That she thinks Buffy's just going to invite him in when he's still a killer.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so they start talking about what's going on, and Buffy's like, you took Willow, and he says, if you kill me, you'll never find the little witch. And Joyce says, Willow's a witch, and I'm like, why would she automatically assume that Willow is an actual, like, witchcraft witch and not just think that Spike's using a name? You like calling her name.
Mm-hmm.
Because that makes more sense to me. Like, that Joyce would think that.
I don't know. Like, I can buy it because she's still trying to figure all this out, and she lives on a Hellmouth now, and she realizes that these things exist, that she might actually jump to the literal witch instead of just a name.
They finish the conversation, and it's very much like in Becoming Part 2 when they're trying to figure everything out and Joyce is asking questions because they're not making sense.
Yeah.
You know, it's very much like that, and Buffy is still ignoring her mom and acting like...
That's the thing.
It's like they haven't learned anything.
That was the read the room line that I was really trying to, like, she could have at least said, Mom, it's okay, or something. Like, you know, just communicated with her mother, who's clearly there in a panic because she knows that, you know, Angel, or knows at least to some degree Angel is responsible for, I mean, I'm assuming some information has been, I don't know what Joyce knows. What does Joyce know? What's going on with Joyce? What has she been filled in on? Does she know that Angel killed Jenny Calendar? Does she know that? I don't know. Like, we just don't, I don't.
Well, she knows Jenny's dead. I don't know if she knows that Angel did it.
Yeah, like, there's a lot of gaps there. But anyway, like, when Buffy takes the time to invite Angel in, she could have also turned to her mom briefly and just said, it's okay, Mom, he's with me, or he's not bad anymore, or something. Like, just something. But she just completely ignores Joyce through the entire conversation. Spike says that once Willow does his spell for him, that he'll let him go. And then they said that if she and her great poof want to tag along, that's fine. If she gets in his way, then she'll be the one that's killed her friends. And that's that scene.
Yeah.
It's never fully explained why Spike goes to the Summers house. I think it shows him with maybe a book in his hands afterwards, so maybe Willow had a spell book at the Summers house, or maybe he just went there because he wanted to see Joyce.
That's kind of what I thought.
He just
No, at the end of that scene between Spike and Willow, she says she's looking through the supplies to do the love spell, and she says, "This isn't enough. I need more stuff." And he asks what, and she says that there's also a book I need. And he asks where the book is, and she says, "I left it somewhere." And he says, "Where?" And then it cuts. I always assumed she left it at Buffy's house.
Yeah.
Because that's the last place Spike would want to go.
Yeah, my thought, though, is that doesn't make sense that she would have actually left a book there so much as she was sending him there in hopes that Buffy would find him.
I agree.
But it seems like he actually got a book from the Summers house, which is weird. I feel like there was an easier way to explain why Spike had to go to the Summers house than, like, weird foreshadowing and transitioning that didn't actually make it explicit when there's really no reason not to make it explicit. So anyway, we're back to Oz and Cordelia.
They're spending a lot of time together.
Yeah. I'm very upset, though, that we didn't get a longer section with Oz, Cordelia, and Buffy. Because that's a trio I need in my life. Like, that seems like a fun trio. And I feel like they could have had, like, at least a scene together longer than, "Oh, they're gone, let's split up."
Yeah. Yeah, I think I like that combination, too.
They're on their way to try to find Giles. Cordelia's saying that perhaps Colombian drug lords took Xander and Willow, because that's a logical place to jump to. And Oz stops the van suddenly, and Cordelia's trying to figure out what's going on as Oz is sniffing the air and says that Willow is nearby.
What? You can smell her? She doesn't even wear perfume.
She's afraid.
Oh my god. Is this some sort of residual werewolf thing? This is very disturbing.
I really agree.
It's interesting because, like, there's the mechanic that's kind of brought up randomly that, like, vampires can smell people's scents. And it makes sense that werewolves could also. But it's, again, kind of like the Slayer sense. Where it just kind of spontaneously works when it makes, like, the plot advance or is specifically needed. But when it would, like, mess up certain story elements, they just forget that that's a thing. It's also interesting that, like, he can smell her specifically because she's afraid, or that he can smell he can smell her emotions, her physical state.
I wonder if he could smell all of her different emotions, or just
fear.
The physical, like, can he smell if she's sad? Can he smell if she's, I don't know, aroused? Because, that's kind of private.
Well, and also you have to understand that they're in a basement in a burnt building, which probably, I mean, it's been sitting there for a while,
stinks.
But probably stinks. I mean, it's been an abandoned, burnt building that's probably gotten a fair amount of, like, wildlife living in it, weather causing stuff to rot, and still probably some burnt smell. Like, there's a lot of stuff masking that fear smell. So he's very tuned into Willow.
Yeah, but think of how strong everyone has to smell every day to him, that he could smell her through that.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how can he be around people?
Yeah.
I don't know.
He could not be around Spike right now, is what we're saying.
So now we are outside the magic shop, and Spike, Angel, and Buffy head for the shop. And this scene coming up is the first scene where Spike, Angel, and Buffy all work together.
Mm-hmm. Technically.
Like, obviously Spike and Angel have, and Buffy and Spike have, but this is the first time for all three of them.
Yeah. And technically the only one in the television series that we see, right? Like, there's no time where these three work together again after this episode. This is it. This is what you get.
Yeah, I think that's true. Angel and Spike are only together again in the last season of Angel when there's no Buffy, and then there's no really crossover after the first season of Angel.
They occupy a scene together, but they don't all three interact, and they certainly don't work together in that scene because all three of them are in the scene and chosen. But it's not.
Yeah, but they don't. Yeah, they don't
not interacting.
Spike is there.
Yeah, they're not interacting with each other there. But that's as close as we get, again, in the series to the three of these. I use the word thruple a lot throughout the rest of the episode.
I was going to call them a threesome, so...
They're kind of going back and forth. He just needs a few supplies. And he starts to, like, bend over and grab his head. Buffy asks, what's wrong? Not that I care. And he says that he's sobering up and it's horrible. I'm just like, yeah, I know those feels. He says that he wishes he was dead, and Buffy offers to stake him. Angel intervenes here and says that they still need him to find the others, in which Buffy immediately calls Spike for his normal tendencies of just picking the most obvious spot, I guess. Like, it's funny how easily she just calls it, and he's just like, what do you think? How thick do you think I am? Like... And I'm just like, aw, they're just so in tune. They just know each other so well. And yeah, they continue to progress towards the magic shop, and they come across a bench. And Spike is just, he's so in the moment. This is kind of like his going through the memories at the beginning of the episode, and that's why he returns to the factory. That's why he specifically crashes into the sign, and here he sees this bench, and he's just like, we killed a homeless man here.
It's memories.
Oh, it's so
memories.
So precious. And then, of course, it pans over to Buffy and Angel, who both look disgusted, and Buffy's like, I guess you had to be there. Oh, man. There's just, like, part of me just wants to read, like, every line of everything that involves these three, because I just enjoy it so much. But, you know, I feel like that's kind of redundant, and somebody could just watch the episode. So they're at the magic shop now. Buffy notes that when she tears down the tape that, I guess it was Spike, in fact, that killed the shopkeep. So they just move past that little bit of Spike being evil and horrible. They split up what everybody's gonna get, start going around and gathering the supplies. Angel starts to poke at Spike a little bit here, which is, I mean, I guess... is something that Angel would do, but also Angel's just all over the place in this episode. He's just like, I don't know where he is emotionally, and I guess that makes sense because he's been through a lot, but also, like, he's just like, let's just keep our heads down and do what he wants so we can get your friends back, and now he's just like, oh, I'm gonna, like, start making Spike angry and talk about how fickle Drusilla is, and I'm just like, what prompted that? Where are you coming from, Angel? What you got going? So yeah, Angel starts poking at Spike, and Spike gets really angry and runs up and punches Angel, and Buffy grabs him and throws him back, and Spike yells at them that it's their fault, and that Drew belongs with him, and that he's nothing without her.
Buffy kind of agrees with him, like, yeah, you're not even a loser anymore, you're a shell of a loser, and then mentions that the last time he looked in on them, they were fighting to the death, and now they're making eyes at each other again. Mm-hmm. At which point, Buffy and Angel both insist that they're still friends, and Spike gives one of my favorite speeches throughout the entire Buffyverse.
You're not friends. You'll never be friends. You'll be in love till it kills you both. You'll fight, and you'll shag, and you'll hate each other till it makes you quiver, but you'll never be friends. Love isn't brains, children. It's blood. Blood screaming inside you to work its will. I may be love's bitch, but at least I'm man enough to admit it.
I do have some things to say about the speech. I really like this speech. I think it's really fitting for Spike, especially at this point in time. And I think it also adds to the ongoing narrative that the show kind of talks about when it comes to love versus passion and obsession and all of the different ways in which it's intertwined. Spike here is not really describing a healthy love in any way, shape, or form, which makes sense. Spike's a bad guy. He's talking about basically being a owner of Drusilla. He's very possessive of the people he loves, kind of deal, and he makes sense for his character to view love in this way as very much there's nothing but passion. And it's clear, like, neither Buffy nor Angel want to hear this. They kind of, turn away from each other after this speech and all of this. And it hits home with them because their relationship is very passion-based. And I'll get into this more during that final scene. But I think this plants something that I've always kind of been aware of with the Buffy and Angel relationship, but I think that I've really started to, like, connect all of the dots of, like, why the Buffy and Angel relationship can't be anything other than romantic. And Spike hits the nail on the head here when he says that they can't be friends. But it's interesting because while that is applicable to Buffy and Angel, I don't like it as a description. It's kind of similar to Xander's speech in Some Assembly Required when he talks about people want the unattainable. It kind of has a similar vibe. But, like, this is Spike, an evil vampire, giving this speech. And I totally am on board with Spike, an evil vampire, giving a speech about love and what love is, and it not being what love actually is. But in the same way, the fact that this is describing a very unhealthy love and how that somehow very much applies to Buffy and Angel's love gives me, like, reason to pause and be like, oh, is this, like, confirmation that Buffy and Angel maybe, aren't great together? Because it's true. There's a lot of stuff there that's unhealthy about their relationship. And it's interesting that this so perfectly applies. This rambling, crazy vampires who has no sense of what love actually is, describing what love is and how it hits so close to home for Buffy and Angel should be a big red flag.
Yeah, but they just kind of ignore it. Because they're Buffy and Angel.
From there, we go back to the basement. Willow's trying to break through the door, and she hears Xander wake up, and then she runs back downstairs. Xander asks, does he remember having a fight with Spike? And Willow's like, yeah. And Xander reaches and fills a bunch of, like, blood that's caked on the side of his head and says, I kicked his ass, right? And it's precious. It's precious. I will say, like, this little moment is another kind of, like, tender moment that kind of works for me. I feel like this little moment between Xander and Willow actually works a little bit. It's not.
It's more natural.
It's not, I wish I wasn't so attracted to you level of cringe. It's more just like them. Like, the line, you were real brave, do you need to barf, is such like a, we've been friends forever and nothing you do is gonna gross me out kind of deal. And that's more natural between them. Willow explains that they are locked in the basement, to which I put counter in all caps with 4 exclamation points. So we are officially locked. We are officially locked in the basement again. That counter's gonna get real high.
Yeah. Chained in a basement. Mm-hmm. Doing pretty good on all our counters. In a basement is the most with 6 so far.
6. Awesome.
Yeah, we've got.
I feel like
it's tied. It's tied with references to She-Mantis.
Oh,
which is also at 6.
I forgot that was even one of our counters.
Bodies Behind Doors has 4, and Buffy Receiving Jewelry has 4.5.
They kind of continue to talk about how Spike wants to do a love spell to get Drusilla back. And they discuss their options. They basically all result in them dying. But, one version involves them starving to death rather than Spike killing them. And that may be the best one.
Yeah, best case scenario.
Then they start to get closer, and the temptation to kiss starts to settle in. And Willow's like, we're not supposed to. And Xander says exemption for impending death situation. And then they begin to kiss. And again, timing in this episode, such specific timing.
immediately as they begin to kiss, Cordelia and Oz walk in.
There's definitely, you have to suspend your disbelief in this, that they were able to enter into that room without being heard, because there's just no way. I mean, maybe they were trying to be sneaky because they weren't sure what they were walking into, and they saw that it was the old factory, and they were like, oh, this could be bad. But I don't know. It's real hard for me to believe that they managed to open the door and walk all the way to the bottom of the steps without being heard at all.
Well, I mean, Xander and Willow were pretty into each other.
Yeah, they're in their own little world. Oh, so yeah, a lot of oh gods in a row as everybody realizes what's just happened, and Oz says we got to get out of here, and Cordelia runs up the stairs, but only makes it about halfway up before she falls through them, and they run up to look down the hole that she's fell in, and she whispers, I fell, and then it pans down to show a piece of rebar sticking out of her stomach. A little bit of a, I guess, fun fact. I don't know how fun this is, but apparently this is, like, Charisma Carpenter actually has a scar from the same type of injury that she had when she was younger, where she actually fell on a piece of rebar and it went into her, and so they mirrored that with this injury. And I believe there is at least one example. They may have made it stand out more, but I think there was a time where you can see her scar later in Angel from this incident, but it may actually be her real scar. I'm not entirely sure.
That's interesting.
Yeah, fun facts with Megan.
Yeah.
So we're back at the magic shop, and the throuple exits with their bags, like massive. Like Willow went in and got like a little bag, like a single bag for the delusting spell. But man, did they need like 3 massive bags full of stuff for this. I don't know if Willow is just like, if I just give him like the longest list of stuff, it'll keep him away the longest and maybe we'll get ready to escape. But they ended up with basically the magic shop as they exit. And Buffy's just like, where's the stuff? Let's get this over with. I want you to leave. I want you out of here. Spike's like, it'll all be over in a few short hours, no trouble at all. And this is when the committee arrives, who's apparently led by Lenny. Oh, Lenny.
Here's my issue with this committee. Lenny comes in, and they talk for a minute and threaten each other, and this is what's going to happen and everything. And Buffy's just like, we can't do this. And Angel says we don't have a choice. And Lenny, the vampire, who's leading the committee from the mayor, says, you other two can walk away from this. Now, Spike then said before that Lenny used to work for him. Considering that this is Sunnydale, and Spike's entire mission when he was in Sunnydale last year was to kill the Slayer, why does Lenny not know who Buffy is?
Lenny's not very bright.
Because he, has no idea this is the Slayer. When she's standing there and about to start fighting, he's not like, oh my gosh, it's the Slayer. I'm not fighting the Slayer.
Yeah.
He's not, Slayer, I'm going to kill you. He has no reaction to her. He doesn't know who this is. Not only does he work for the mayor in Sunnydale, he's been in Sunnydale for a while, and he used to work for Spike.
Yeah.
All very good reasons he should know who Buffy is. And also, how did he survive in Sunnydale that long? It makes no sense.
I'm going to be on the side of, I joined a committee to kill Spike. And you're right, that they should be able to connect the dots. Lenny should know who Buffy is. He should know who Angel is. Really, if he truly worked for Spike, he should know both of them. And he should understand that
this isn't a good fight.
Killing just Spike, maybe that could be pulled off. But killing Spike, Angel, and Buffy? Ooh, that's,
not gonna happen.
That's maybe a time where you need to, have another meeting or two before you decide what actions the committee needs to take. So, fight happens. It's a big one. There's lots of fighting happening. I have a few notes. Angel, again, Like, at the start of the fight, he seems to be doing remarkably well, and then by the end of the fight, he's just useless, so I'm not really sure what happened there. But, like, he's actually holding his own pretty well, considering that he's still not up to his full strength, I suppose. Spike is fighting some vamps while on a car. Buffy fights vamps over at, like, the, like, coffee shop area. And this is when I note that, like, this entire street is completely deserted. The coffee shop, all of like the main street of Sunnydale is empty. And we know that it has to be fairly early in the evening because the gang was like still planning on going bowling. So it's not like 2 in the morning.
It's not late. Yeah.
It's just this particular area of Sunnydale is completely empty at the moment. Which, I mean, makes sense because it's Sunnydale, but also doesn't make sense because there's always people everywhere, even though the fact that it's Sunnydale. Basically, they continue to fight. There's a bunch of quick cuts. I said that Buffy stakes 2 vampires at once, which is pretty cool. Spike clotheslines a vampire. That's kind of cool. I just made random notes. It's a long, like, very intercut fight scene. And it's a delight to behold these 3 fighting on the same side for the one glorious moment that happens. And then they all kind of retreat back into the magic shop. Angel and Spike block the window with a bookcase. Buffy goes and gets stakes for everyone, and they all line up in this beautiful shot. And Spike says this should be a kick, and Buffy says, "I violently dislike you."
Which she says more than once.
It's such a beautiful line. I love it so much. And a vampire comes in the back door, and Angel goes to that door. Buffy masters the art of ladder fighting is how I put it. My notes for this section are flawless.
Love it.
Flawless.
I love it.
And then Spike gets tossed around, and that's how I concluded that. We get this very, very brief cut back to the factory where it shows Xander climbing down to see how Cordelia's doing. They mention that Oz went to get help, and we're back at the fight. Angel's holding the door. Buffy's like, we have to get out of here. The door is eventually knocked onto Angel, and Angel is on the floor with the door on top of him and is just useless for the rest of the fight. Which he was fighting pretty good at the beginning of this fight, and then he's just like, oh, a door's on me, and now I'm done.
Yeah. I've kind of got it in my notes, like, when did Angel get so weak?
Yeah. It would make sense if he was that weak throughout the entire fight, but he's pretty capable at the beginning of this fight, and then just suddenly it's like a light switch, and then he's back to being like, because like if there's the idea that he's still not recovered his strength from the 100 years of torture that he had to undergo, I could buy it. But like the fact that he starts off strong, maybe he overextends himself, and that's the idea. I don't know. But it's just funny that he's just, for the rest of this fight, he's just laying on the floor with a door on him. Lenny goes after Spike and mentions that he's gone soft, and this is when Spike gets very offended. Lenny says that he's soft like baby food.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although I want to point out a direction in the script book that I actually circled.
Okay.
And in my notes wrote TF. But okay, so right after Buffy tells Spike, "I violently dislike you," it has directions for the fight, and Buffy is caught between 2 vampires by the sliding ladder in the middle of the store. Ladder kung fu ensues.
Oh.
And then, oh no, it gets better. Then the next sentence for the script direction says, "The back door is getting seriously pounded." Yeah.
Love isn't brains.
Yeah. Basically. Some of the script directions in this episode are just amazing.
Okay, so Spike faces Lenny and another vampire. Buffy goes over to get Angel out from underneath the very, very heavy door and says that he's not up to his full strength yet. They see that the bookcase that they used to block the window is about to go, And then they spy a bunch of small bottles of holy water. And then we cut back to Spike repeatedly smashing Lenny's head into a table. Screaming, baby likes his supper, baby likes his supper. And then stakes him and says, why doesn't baby have a nap? And I'm just like, all of this whole random, like, back and forth because Spike is soft, like baby food. And I'm not sure that's ever been, like, an analogy that I've heard. Buffy shouts for Spike to get down. He ducks, and again, the bookcase conveniently goes at just that time, and they throw a bunch of the holy water vials at the vamps, and the vamps retreat. Because that was the thing that they decided, oh no, now we're outmatched. We're not fighting two of the most notorious vampires and the, like, Slayer that killed the master. That we could handle. But now they have holy water. They're equipped with holy water. Now we're outmatched. So they have to run now.
Yeah.
Spike pops up and says that was a whole lot of fun. And Angel kind of bends down in pain, and Buffy holds him up, and Spike points out that, oh yeah, they're just friends. There's no danger there.
Yeah.
Spike's just in a great mood all of a sudden. I'm living for it.
Oh, yeah. He got some fighting in. And then Buffy's like, you know what? Let's do the spell. And Spike's like, yeah, whatever. Your friends are in the factory. And she gives the best look here. It's the most withering look. I love it. She's supposed, in the script it says she's supposed to look surprised, but I think the look she gives him is much better.
Yeah, it's great.
And so basically he's like, you know what? I'm going to go get Drew and torture her until she wants me again. I'm like, okay, Spike.
Yep. There's a lot to unpack there, but we'll get into to Spike's relationship with
Drusilla,
with love and violence being intertwined throughout the rest of the series, because that's something that comes up a lot with his character. So yeah, he heads for the back door to exit and pauses and gives a little smile and says, "Love's a funny thing," and then he leaves. And yeah, another quick cut back to the factory. Xander's now with Cordelia, and Cordelia says that she can't see him, and then her head rolls to the side and she exhales, and there's like a moment of panic as
you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know if she actually died or not.
They definitely killed off Cordelia here, because we cut to a funeral and everybody's just like, oh my god. This is actually known as the do I love Cordelia test, because so many people hated Cordelia for so long, and then like your reaction to this moment is supposed to be the test of, oh, I do love Cordelia now. Cordelia's really grown on me. Because Cordelia was the most hated character for so long. And this is the do I love Cordelia test. If you start to panic here, if you watch it and do not realize that Cordelia is not actually dead in this moment, then you know you love Cordelia. Anyway, it pans down to Buffy and Willow walking past the funeral, and Buffy's just like, so Cordelia's gonna be okay.
They have this talk about Willow and what she wants and how she knows what she wants Oz now, and she's gonna work to get him back by groveling. And then Xander appears in Cordelia's hospital room and tries to give her flowers, and she's just very, like, she kind of whispers his name like she's gonna, say something to him, and then very, very, like, with hatred in her voice, stay away from me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, yeah, she's not forgiving.
Oh, no. And, like...
No.
We'll get into this more later on, I'm sure. But like, props to Cordelia for actually allowing Xander to have a consequence. And like, having that moment of just being like, no, like, it's even set up where she's just like, Xander, and like he comes back so hopeful and just like, oh, I can make this right, and she's just like, nope. Screw you, get out.
Yeah.
But yeah, he does leave, and you can see that she's, while not forgiving, deeply, deeply upset by what has happened, and begins to like tear up. And then we have this scene, which I've talked briefly about how I have stuff to say about this scene. So Buffy goes to visit Angel and says that she's not going to visit him any longer, and then repeats basically everything that Spike said, that they're not friends, and that, you know, she can try to fool others, but she can't fool herself or Spike for some reason, and that what she wants from him, that she could never have that. This is Angel, like the boy in love, talking more here, saying, I don't accept that, even though earlier he was pushing for her to leave town, as the friend, even though it's established here that they're not friends. But now the honest side of him is coming out and saying, I don't accept that, I want you to be here with me, kind of deal. And Buffy says that he has to accept it, and that the only way that they can still see each other is that he would have to tell her that he doesn't love her, and he says nothing, and Buffy turns and leaves. What's interesting, I think, to me about the Buffy and Angel relationship, and something that I think is very much presented in this scene specifically, but throughout all of their relationship, is that if they can't physically be together, if they can't romantically be together, they can't be together at all.
Well, yeah.
And it's super, super evident, especially when they're like removed from each other and start to pull away and go in their separate directions, how codependent this relationship really is, and how just unhealthy it is. Because, like, I've talked a little bit briefly here, is like Angel feels kind of like a different character in Buffy than he does in his own show. Like, he feels so single-mindedly focused on Buffy, which makes sense based on the way that Buffy's structured, and the fact that obviously in his own show he would get his own independence, and have more going on with him than just his relationship with Buffy. But in a way that kind of works, that his character almost feels like a different character when he's away from Buffy, because of this really unhealthy codependency they have, to where they, like, Angel's almost like, if he's close enough to Buffy to, you know, actually have the connection, then it's almost like it overtakes him. And we kind of talked about this as early as Angel in season 1, how there's like, just like, they're so drawn to each other so quickly in that episode, even though, like, it's kind of the first episode that it really leans into the romantic side, and then all of a sudden they're just like on top of each other, right? Like, just making out and stuff like it's just like all in each other's space. But yeah, like, there's definitely something about Buffy and Angel's relationship that if it can't be physical, then it can't happen at all. That makes me feel like even if it could be physical, there's still something missing there that would make it a good relationship. You know? If that's how dependent they are on the physical side of their relationship,
yeah,
then I feel like there's something missing. And I think a lot of people have talked about the first love aspect of Buffy and Angel, and how it's all very intense and melodramatic, and a very romanticized, passionate version of love that doesn't really cover other aspects of love that exist. And, you know, I talked a little bit about Spike's speech, and how Spike's speech really isn't what, like, a true partnership love should be, yet somehow it so perfectly fits with Buffy and Angel, because Buffy and Angel never really got the chance to mature into anything beyond that, like, crazy physical, passionate love before it all fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're stuck in a place where they can't exist around each other because they can't risk that crazy, passionate, physical part to come back up. But, like, they never really got a chance to grow into anything beyond the initial physical attraction stages of love. Like, I think they were still trying to figure out how they would fit into each other's lives in any way, shape, or form before it was all ripped away that they would ever even have a chance. Because, yeah, it's just like, it's a doomed relationship because of the gypsy curse, but it's also doomed for so many other reasons. And, like, even in the best possible scenario, which we'll get to in Angel season 1, and I'll talk a lot at length at that episode when he becomes human and they have a chance to actually do something, and then he decides to strip that away. Like, there's just something about him that just doesn't work. And I don't know, like, what it is that just doesn't work in any, like, there's just no way that I see any reality happening to where these two have a happy ending. Like, I think it's impossible. And I mean, I say that for probably every single relationship in Buffy, because that's just the way that the Buffyverse works, and every relationship is doomed. But, like, Angel and Buffy are so doomed. They're especially doomed.
Always.
Like, they've been handed what they wanted on a silver platter, and still it ended up doomed. And I'm just like, how? There is something to say, I guess, of the to love something you have to let it go mentality of Buffy and Angel's relationship, and this is kind of shown here and again echoed in the finale when Angel leaves. But other than that, it's a more selfish love than I remembered it being. When I watched this episode, it's just like, there is that aspect of this that hits way too close to what Buffy and Angel actually have, and that's a very selfish, draining kind of love that Spike's describing there, and I'm just like, oof, that's not good. So then we get sad intercuts of everybody being all sad. Mm-hmm. Willow staring at her Pez. Oz brooding at the bronze. Xander staring wistfully out the book cage, and Cordelia looking completely broken in her hospital bed. And Buffy sitting alone at the school grounds. Like, all of these happen at completely different times. Yeah. Some of them are night and some of them are day. And they're just very oddly done. All over the place. And so everybody's doing terrible except Spike. Spike's having a great time.
I love it. Oh, I love it. Love it. Love it. I do wonder, though, how is he never stopped by the police? Like, with that black paint over the entire car. Like, how is this not ever an issue? Aww. You know? He wants to drive during the day, but, like, I don't understand how he's never stopped. You can't think of a reason either.
No, I mean, listen, I love this show. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, my favorite show of all time.
Oh, mine too.
I absolutely adore it for so much that it does. Logic?
Not part of that.
All right, so we end the episode with Spike singing our one song of the episode, which is My Way, Gary Oldman's My Way. And man, is he belting it. That's it. Scene. That's it. Finn. That's it.
All done.
All right. I feel like I talked both way too long and not enough about that episode. We'll get back to Spike much later on in the series. Well, not much later on, but it feels like it's going to be a long time.
Next season.
Next season, but also like next year for us based on our release schedule right now. So, aw. Next episode we're covering is The Wish, which I am very excited for. Yes, that is the next episode. I was just making sure. I was just like, I said that so confidently, and then I was just like, oh crap, what have I done?
The Wish and then Amends, which is one of my least favorite.
Mm-hmm. So, this has been our podcast, and we thank you so much for listening. And this is where we say, bye.
Bye.
It's going a little different style there. What did you think?
Yeah, you said bye different.
Yeah.
I was waiting for your sing-songy bye, and it did not happen.
So my problem, and this has happened to me before, is I had some good notes and I was really organized and I had all these thoughts, and then we kept having to delay the podcast and I didn't refresh on the notes, and so I feel like I was all over the place during that one.
Yeah, I was too. That one was kind of...
But I feel
like I was...
Yeah, I feel like the episode's also way more all over the place than I remember it being, so... And then the random introduction that apparently Oz has super smell abilities.
Well, now we know.
Now we know.